Good morning. It's good to see every one of you this morning, and so glad that, as Tim mentioned, warm enough to get a little of us out that have stayed away during inclement weather and the holidays and such, and so we're glad to have you back. A little bit of housekeeping. First off, we want to apologize for our video screen. Of course, our projector is a little bit darker than what we've had. Our other one is being worked on, and a solution will be made of whether getting that fixed or getting a new one. But we apologize for that because the screen was just a little bit darker, and we're going to have to go through a little bit of that during these next couple of weeks, so please bear with us on that. As Tim will probably mention, this is also our fellowship luncheon, and so we want you to be our guest if you are our visitor. We always ask our visitors, if you remain after services, just a brief moment so we can at least get to know you a little bit better and introduce ourselves to you. And then also with the luncheon, we ask you to please stay and be our invited guest. Now, also, if you just give me a little bit of time, kind of bittersweet in a lot of moments such as this, but we are going to say goodbye to Terry and Jeanette Ball. This is their last Sunday with us. As some of you already know, they had sold their house and they will be moving to New Jersey to be with Celinda, their daughter. Hopefully, as rumor has it, if he gets the job in Franklin, Tennessee, maybe he'll get a little bit closer, and maybe we can get you guys a little bit closer to home so we can maybe get an opportunity to visit with you. If you've not been able to sign the board in the back, it's kind of an old tradition here. Is such that we have an old cutting board that was made by Bill Reed, one of our former elders who had passed on some time ago, and he had made that, and we had that. Some of them have already been signing, so make sure you sign on the way out, or if you want to sign over during our fellowship luncheon, some of that we want to give to them. What do we put into words for Terry and Jeanette? Longtime members. I know that they're both going to cringe for me even talking about them. As many of you say that a lot of stuff goes on in this congregation behind the scenes that you are not aware of. Well, you're going to be aware of one today, because I want you to know how much I've appreciated them. Being in the position as minister, you get to go out and have to be with people in situations, whether it's sickness or whether there's an illness, and I'm always following behind those two. They're always working. They're always there. Well, Terry and Jeanette stopped by and see me. Terry and Jeanette has been here. Terry and Jeanette, and I'm just kind of like following behind them, which is a good thing. They were never asked. They were never told what to do and how to do it. They just work. And they're so busy working. In fact, as Terry said to the men's meeting when he talked about going to New Jersey, they're just going to pick up and continue working there. They're going to find a work to do, and as long as they are able, they're going to do that. But I know the congregation wants to tell so much more, and you'll probably have heard those words, and whether it be cards or phone calls, to tell you how much you're going to be missed. Missed in a lot of ways, not just for you being in the spots that you are. Everybody has their certain places of sitting. I kind of know when I look out, and it warms my heart because I know certain people where they are, and I can kind of look to them. But we are going to miss you, and we wish you well. And, of course, this is not goodbye as Christians, so we want to be able to wish you the very best in your new transition. Now I'm done. We've come to know that those that are in the church are considered family. We just talk about that, right? We're a family for those who are Christian. That's what it's all about, and it's a great feeling. And to know that we are in this life and the challenges that beset us, that we are not alone. And even when we don't really have personal family around, we know that we can have this. We are called brothers and sisters in Christ, as the Bible explains it. It's a very comforting feeling. And I know no matter where in the world you go, that you can find that set up. It's nice that if you're on vacation or if you're away from home and if you find the church, you're welcomed as family, as brothers and sisters. And that carries on, and that's a very comforting feeling, as we hope that Terry and Jeanette will find when they go. You will find family. And for most, being in a family is a very special thing, very special. Outside of marriage, there's nothing more stronger than relationships. And when I said for the most part, because I also know there are breakdowns of the family over the years which we've seen, which has altered some people's thinking when it comes to what really family is. They can be confused by that because maybe they don't have a loving father or mother to relate to. And that's really not what they can come back to. But what we should understand and hear of stories of fathers who abandon their children with neglect or even have left. Mothers who can walk away from all of it as well. And we too far often than we would like to see, as that pain is shown to us as well. I'll not be talking much about that aspect today. Instead, I want to talk more about our family here, the spiritual family, and the importance of not only building up one, but also maintaining it, maybe even having to fight for it. The first place that we'll look is the very reason of why we come, why we should come on the first day of the week, why we attend the services. It's for encouragement. And as the Hebrew writer expressed this in Hebrews 10:24 and 25, which it states out very plainly, and let us consider how to stimulate one another to love and good deeds, not forsaking our own assembling together as in the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day drawing near. Now, I know that for those of you who've sit and listened to my lessons before, I know I brought this concept up time and time again, but in order for me to consider, what does that take? Well, that takes a little bit of effort. See, for me to consider, that a consideration is a thought. I must take a little thought. Well, with that takes a little bit of effort. And again, giving up a little bit more of me, giving up a little bit more of my time, and thinking of maybe you a little more highly. That's encouraged as well. I know you've heard it, but do we do it? I think of you first. When's the last time you've really done that? I mean, even coming to services, I thought of me. I got breakfast. I got cleaned up. I got dressed up. I came here, and now I'm here. Did I do any consideration of any of you before I got here? See, Paul says this in Philippians 2:1 through 5, or 2 through 5. By being of the same mind, maintaining the same love, not just having the same love, but maintaining it. That's going to take some effort. Maintaining the same love, united in spirit, intent on one purpose. That's all of us intending to go to heaven. Do nothing from selfish or empty conceit, but with humility of mind, regard one another as more important than yourselves. Do not merely look out for your own personal interests, but also for the interests of others. Have this attitude. What attitude? Everything that what he just described. Have this attitude in yourself, which was also in Christ Jesus. Of course, as our example to follow in life. Notice we do take care of ourselves, because we're going to do that. That's obvious. Because he says, do not look merely, not just solely out for your own personal interest, that's going to be natural. We're all going to do that. But also for others' interests. And regard one another as more important than yourself. That's a little bit of a step up than just loving my brother as I love myself. This goes above because it's above. It's first and foremost. I put you over me. And why do we have this mindset, this attitude in ourselves? Because it was also found in Christ Jesus in verse 6. He told us that he left his throne in glory. If you read on into this chapter in Philippians, the example of him emptying himself, not for him, but for us. Why he even went to the cross willingly for us, not because of him, not because of something that he had done. Because if that's all he had to do was die for himself, that's what anybody else would have to do, is we would die for our own sins. But he died for us, yet without sin. Self-sacrificing, again, for others continually was Jesus' ministry. And I consider how I can even get you excited more about loving and doing even more good works. Even if I had to take the time and talk a little bit about Terry and Jeanette, to maybe encourage someone else to kind of pick up that, to continue doing, or maybe even reach out more than what we were doing. And what an encouragement that I receive for the week when I see that from each one of you, and that you're doing it to others. But you know what? If you are not here, no one can receive it. I can't receive it, and you can't receive it. That's the shameful part of it. It's why we're told why we don't miss. Not for our attendance records. Don't get caught up in the God's keeping an attendance record of how many times you went to church. You missed the point. That's what it says. No, you don't do that like as others. Count that. But missing the opportunity, missing a great opportunity of encouragement on both ends, of giving and receiving as we gather together. Walking the Christian life is all about encouragement. 1 Thessalonians 5 and 11 tells us to encourage one another just as you are doing. They were already doing that. And he encourages what? To keep maintaining that. Because you can do it up until the day that you say, well, I'm going to stop doing that. I've been there, done that. And unfortunately, no matter how old you get, you don't retire from church work until God calls us home. Really. We retire from a job and say, well, I've done that. I've put in 30 years of service. I don't see that in any of the New Testament writings, that we have a little layoff time. Our rest is our rest when we finish the course and finish the race. And when we die, then we're at rest, an eternal rest, no longer having to work and doing good works and doing all those things. He encourages them to keep it up. Hebrews 3 and 13 says, but encourage one another daily as long as it's called today. Are we still calling it today? You woke up today. So we're still in this today. So that none of you may be hardened by sin's deceitfulness. When you think about it, really, in a family state, that's what families do. You share life together. And with that, you encourage each other. You pick each other up when you're down. You rally the troops. You circle the wagons. All of these things are used as imagery. You become the family cheerleader and family supporter. You build the family up. Again, most of the time. Again, with all the dysfunction of the world, there are families that are not set up that way. And you know what? That's why it's so great when you can come into a Christian atmosphere and it's done right. People of the world that don't get that, it is so new and is so, they don't experience it anywhere else. That's what's salt and light. It shines what Christ is really trying to emulate, even though they can't get it outside these buildings. And yes, there are families that all the scene that they want to do that you can pick out and say, well, in my experience, it's not like that, Eric. All my family has wanted to do is discourage me, to tear me down. And yes, that is a reality, but it should not be in the Lord's family. And that sin of the world does exist. And why, if we are difference makers, people can see that and respond to it. That's why you gravitate towards it. You don't need to decipher for them. They know all the wrongs of the ways of how not to do it. How comforting is it for a man that was just released from prison to be added to this family, to call me, where I receive encouragement, and then hopefully he gets encouragement, and then give encouragement and be called brother, and call someone brother and sister to a family that he never met personally. And again, I appreciate some of you that gave those gifts right before Christmas time that we could send a little care package to him, because he entered out with prison with nothing but the clothes on his back. Literally, the clothes on his back, which were not even fitted for him. His pants were rolled up so much because he would have been walking on the ends of them because it wasn't his size. And yet, that is what God's family concept is all about. I personally have seen that work. And I understand both. But this is how God's family is supposed to act in spite of the outside world influences. And you know what? In reality, he called his personal family during that time to see if they could aid. And they said, we can't even assimilate our lives to even keep our head above water. No, we can't really help you at this time. So we get a little bit of discouragement, but hopefully a little bit of encouragement on the other end. And unlike Cain, when asked by God where his brother was, proclaimed and told God, am I my brother's keeper? I want us to know that we are indeed responsible for one another, not just the eldership. The elders are supposed to oversee the flock, an individual. Another example of that is found in James. So if you'll turn over to James chapter 5 briefly, and let's examine this together in verses 19 and 20. Here's what the writer here for James says. My brethren, if any among you strays from the truth, and one turns him back, let him know that he who turns a sinner from the error of his way will save his soul from death and will cover a multitude of sins. First, if you are here today and are possibly a wanderer, then here is your chance to come home. Because that invitation is always open. Because that's clearly stated as long as it's called today. Even salvation is offered at a moment's notice, as long as it's called today. No matter what you think that you may have said, maybe what had have done, it is always open. Secondly, and the more less paid attention to with this subject, if you know and love someone who is wandering, go and get them. People everywhere, from all types of lifestyles and backgrounds, have the tendency to wander. This is not an isolated thing. When we aren't as focused and may have turned aside, yet even in the church, that's why this particular letter addressed the problem to believers about believers. This isn't about going and the evangelistic call to preaching the gospel to every creature. Yes, that is part of it as well. But our lives are never in the family of God to be solitary. Well, I'm just worshiping God at home, and I'm praying in my closet, and I'm doing all that, and it's just God and me. See, our lives are intertwined and are supposed to be with other Christ followers. That's why you even come up with the word Christian to begin with. That defines a family. When we are a true family, we also bear responsibility for our wandering siblings. Well, that's the stopping point. Well, one can say, well, that's just none of my business. That is none of my concern. And you know what? That is a common thought. And when we have become so silenced right after that, you know why? Because we've been told that. We've been told that maybe by many, maybe even by family members. Not by going with what the book says, but for the most part, we have been told this by others. That is the command of others. It's none of your business. It's my life. Leave me alone. You know who always says that? It's those families that are forced to save family members from themselves, called an intervention. It's the last thing a family can try to save someone from themselves because they cannot see that. Well, just let them be. Let them be found in a gutter. Let them just, if that's the way they want to do it. We try to save them because it's the last. It is painful. And yes, sometimes it works, other times only for a while, and sometimes not at all, but you've got to try. You've got to say, at least I've done my part in outreaching in love. If we really, truly love the person, truly love that person and care for them that deeply. And like Paul said in that verse earlier, being of the same mind, maintaining the same love, united in spirit, intent on one purpose, all of that is worth trying out of our love to save that person. And even if they can't see, but even if it's from themselves, the families love that one so much, they're willing to do anything, including that type of confrontation, if that's what it takes. Maybe that person hasn't seen someone else in the family for 2 years because of that situation, but I've seen them come and rally and come together for that one purpose. See, they're doing the same thing, and that same call to be united in that front. You will never see the fruits of not trying. Talked a little bit about that in class today. You just leave a field by itself, it will be overtaken by all kinds of things. I didn't do anything with it. Just let it stay still. If it really is none of my business, and I leave you alone. See, that's an easy concept to accept because it takes no effort whatsoever. Maybe we even get to wash our hands of it all. When we think of a wanderer, we may see them of rebellion and their immediate danger. They may roam around and never settle down. Their relationships may be momentary. We say that all is well, and some are lost, wondering if there's something better. But a lot of them are caught in the merry-go-round of wandering. Despite their poor-sounding outcome of a wanderer, let us never forget there is still hope for a wanderer. Don't ever forget that. Because no one is beyond the reach of God's grace. When James writes, if anyone among you wanders, this is not for those on the outside, but a letter to the church. So we too can be vulnerable to wandering. Anyone is just that. There are no disclaimers, and our excuses for not pursuing them is also not found. We can't ever say, well, she's too far gone. His life is too complicated. Or it's just too messy. I can't get into that mix. All of these defenses are not found in the Bible. It's wrong. See, what James says, this is about anyone. Remember, picture a prodigal. And on their end, when you get into their mindset, sometimes it's hard for them because they can be afraid. He says, we're afraid, they may be afraid, and even afraid to approach coming back. They may even think it's too late for them. And for us abandoning them and washing our hands of them, what does that send the message of? I don't really care for you that much. It's not really my concern. It is my concern if we have the same purpose and the same united and the same love. They can have major doubt. They may, yes, even be a willful wanderer that truly left because it's what they want to do. And God may have given them over to it, as the Bible says that can happen. And maybe as this lesson is given, maybe God is bringing someone to mind for you. A specific person in your life he wants you to approach. Perhaps it's someone obvious. Maybe it's a child, a sibling, a close friend to whom your heart immediately turns to. Then go and bring that person back. How? Well, it's not by leaving a tract in the mailbox. Don't hope that they drive by a billboard to hear some message or come back to the church just by chance or goes and visits the preacher. Don't sail a gospel blimp over their neighborhood with neon blinking signs. See, that's all distant. That doesn't really show care. That doesn't share. We hear that adage so many times. People don't care how much you know what? Until they see how much you care. How much do you really care? A rescue just like that divine intervention with a true family member requires direct contact and a personal touch. What if the family said, I can't do it? Why don't you? You know what to do. That one needs to know family loves them, not by some counselor or professional that they don't know, that we want to send them to. Well, we'll let the professionals handle it. They know what to do. This is truthfully in the area that we can fall short. And really, because of fear. Fear is such an enabler. Being fearful of the situation, I'm just afraid. And being afraid scares me, no pun intended, because of Revelation, what 21:8 says. And also the fear of the one talent man. They both were afraid. I was afraid, and I hid my talent. Was there a reward in the end? In Revelation, which we always quote, says all liars have their place in the lake of fire. Look at the very first thing. It says the fearful in Revelations 21. I was just afraid. And fear is an enabler. He was also afraid, the one talent man. I don't want to be left approaching God's throne being in the afraid category. I was just afraid. And it can be scary on the other end as well. You know why? Because the stakes couldn't be any higher. Look at it again. Whoever brings back a sinner from his wandering will save his soul from death, not from dying and being placed in the ground, which all of us are appointed once to do. We're talking about the second death. Save his soul from death and will cover a multitude of sins. Can't imagine eternity separated from God in hell. Revelations 20:14 and 15 stresses that. Although God may allow his children to wander, the good news for them and for us today, he never gives up on any of them. His long suffering. That's why, so where is this coming? It's been 2,000 years and he's not returned yet. So he doesn't want to see any perish. Neither would we. When the Lord illustrated leaving the 99, he left the 99. He went and got. Going and getting the one. Not the illustration of staying with the 99 and waiting for the one to come to his senses and then come back to the fold. It's not the illustration that's given. Yeah, but that was for Jesus. And that was what he was. Talked about that in our class today too, about Hebrews. Be imitators. We have to imitate just that. It's too dangerous to leave them by themselves. And we're described as sheep. And again, if we are to imitate God, the study that I gave even last Sunday night, what are we doing about it now? But what also is truth is what we don't like to hear is that going and finding a wanderer is messy business, no doubt. And that's why none of us really want to be a part of it. Your heart will be heavy. Your feelings may be hurt. And yes, your toes could get stepped on. And before we're quick to respond, well, Eric, that's exactly why I don't do it. You're only catering to yourself and what's comfortable for you. What do we just start out about? Consider someone more important than yourselves? What is it about my feelings or their feelings? Well, it's about my feelings because I got to live with myself, and I can't live with all of what you just described. I want you to consider this. Ask yourself this question. Can we be selfless enough to risk our own comfort to rescuing a wandering soul? You're kind of caught with answering that because if you say one way, then it's out of complete selfishness. And if you answer the other, then that becomes a greater and bigger challenge. Do we care just about my feelings? Are they worth it? Are they, the soul, are they worth it? God thinks so. Really and truthfully, may God forgive you or I when we can huddle in our holy circles and don't allow our hearts to be moved for people at risk. Not just the lost. We become disheartened from them. Well, they're just lost. I don't want to go out in the world. It's a hard world, and they'll say things and do things, and they'll persecute me. Yeah, all for his name's sake. Yeah, they will do that. Jesus said if they did it to me, they're going to do it to you. That's a foregone conclusion. You're not going to get a pass. The Son of God came and got that treatment. What makes you think that you're going to be exempt from that? That's what he's paraphrasing. Do we even have compassion for a wanderer or for the lost? It's why we don't evangelize, we don't disciple, and we don't care to bring back a wanderer and even have love for the wanderer. Do you remember how the Bible describes one who returns? In that getting the one of member of the 99 in Luke 15 and 7, we can see what heaven is like, how their response is. I tell you that in the same way that there will be more joy in heaven over one sinner who repents than over the 99 righteous persons who need no repentance. Angels rejoice. There's more rejoicing in heaven from one who returns. We can so easily lose heart for those, but they're still a soul, and they're still worth it all. And we can so easily lose touch with such precious souls. And one of the other reasons that we give up so easily is that we live in such a throwaway, disposable society. Because we as a nation, if we don't value life in the beginning and cast away babies because of selfishness, that's another example. It's going to cramp my style. I can't have this baby. I didn't plan on having this baby. I didn't intend it. I don't want it. And we throw them away. And then we do that at the end of life, called euthanasia. We call it, well, these older people, they're just suffering, we just need to just get rid of them before all of that turmoil. Where does that line stop? It just keeps going to who values life at what value of life has. And we cast the elderly aside, saying that they have no worth because we think that's no quality of life. I wouldn't like to live like that. Are people important enough for saving? God thought so. And we are to be the same. With this, maybe some of us were once a wanderer. I know I was. I know I've told you the story many times before, that if I didn't have those people in my life then, I may not be standing before you right now. But faithful in the church, married with 2 children. See, the story keeps going on and on. That didn't take place during that time. Maybe you have come home recently thinking of that someone was used God to bring you back. And how thankful you are for them just to take a little time. Just to take a little time out of their schedule to consider them first over themselves. Perhaps maybe if we've been on that, like I've said that I have, maybe it's time to kind of pay that back to someone else or pay it forward. How you want to say, not that I owe anybody else. But what I appreciated of someone taking that time when they didn't have to invest in me. What did it reap? Well, hopefully you're happy that I'm standing in front of you. I know I'm happy to be here. Maybe it's time to give back that priceless gift. Ask God to enable you to reach out to that someone. Then take courage and then go get the wanderer. That's really our mission. Mission out of love. And yes, it can be hard and difficult. And it makes us feel uncomfortable. See, going back to the I again. It's all about me and what makes me. And as long as I live in my little bubble, in my little world, I just like that. Is that what your life's going to say? Is that what it's going to produce? A sad day at your funeral, if that's all that it's going to say. Boy, he just lived for himself. He gained all of this, and this is what it's left. And that's what he goes with. Entered the world with nothing and left the world with nothing. I know we're better than that, and that's what we offer here as an invitation, that maybe we can encourage you as you've received encouragement, hopefully today, and hopefully you can return that and encourage someone else. That's what it's all about. That's what family's all about. And we offer an invitation that we can pray with you and for you on a multitude of things that maybe is going on in your life. Maybe you never obeyed the gospel and want to know that that invitation is open and ready and prepared for you if that is your decision. Whatever your need is, if you have one, if you'll come now and make it known as we stand and as we sing.